Gasps ripple through the auditorium the moment Elon Musk leans forward, voice dipped in that familiar mix of sarcasm and superiority. He doesn't ask a question so much as deliver a verdict disguised as curiosity. He wonders, loudly enough for the cameras to savor every syllable, whether Jasmine Crockett truly understands the complexities of the policies she speaks about, or if she's simply repeating what smarter people told her to say. A few audience members shift in their seats, unsure if they heard him correctly. Others freeze, stunned by the audacity. Musk smirks, basking in the murmurs, convinced he's already seized control of the moment before it even begins. Crockett doesn't flinch. She lifts her head with slow, deliberate grace, as though the insult didn't cut but clarified. Her eyes lock onto his, unblinking, steady, refusing to give him even a flicker of satisfaction. The stage lights spill across her face, illuminating a calm that feels both defiant and unbreakable. The air thickens. Cameras zoom in, chasing the tension like heat rising off pavement. Somewhere in the crowd, a whispered wow slips out. Musk shifts again, emboldened by what he mistakes for silence. He repeats his jab, sharper this time, pushing her, testing her, trying to corner her publicly the way he corners competitors online. He expects her to stumble. But Jasmine's stillness isn't fear. It's preparation. She inhales, quiet but powerful, the kind of breath taken right before history pivots. And in that breath, the room holds itself still, waiting, watching, sensing that something is about to break in a way no one predicted. Every person in that room could feel the balance of power tilting, as if the moment itself were leaning toward her rising, unspoken truth and resolve. But what Jasmine said next was only the beginning. Just a few hours earlier, the entire country felt like it was vibrating with anticipation. Clips of Musk's latest online jabs had already gone viral, threads where he mocked elected officials, dismissed community advocates, and framed himself as the lone genius surrounded by lightweight thinkers. His fans amplified every post, while critics warned that his influence was beginning to blur the line between wealth and unchecked political power. By noon, hashtags predicting a clash at the evening forum were already trending. Commentators on cable news teased the event like it was a heavyweight fight, hinting that Musk planned to confront several lawmakers live on stage. But the name that grabbed the most attention was Jasmine Crockett. People knew her for her composure, her sharp intelligence, and the way she spoke about dignity like it was a muscle she refused to let anyone weaken. She represented communities that rarely got the national spotlight: immigrant families, working-class neighborhoods, young people who felt talked over, dismissed, or erased. To many, Crockett wasn't just another official, she was becoming a symbol. And tonight, she would be face-to-face with the richest man in America, a man who didn't just walk into rooms, he bent them around him. News clips replayed Musk's history of dismantling opponents through arrogance and confidence. He was used to having the upper hand, used to controlling the temperature of a room with a single smirk. Analysts framed him as a titan stepping into yet another arena, ready to dominate through sheer presence. But Crockett carried something different into the building, the weight of real people's stories, their frustrations, their hopes. She walked in not to impress him, but to hold him accountable in front of the millions who felt unheard. As the sun dipped below the horizon, tweets predicting chaos filled timelines. People argued about whether Musk would steamroll the night or whether Crockett would hold her ground. Memes, countdown gifs, live stream links, social media treated the forum like a national event. Families tuned in from living rooms, from crowded apartments, from dorms. Immigrant parents adjusted the volume. Young voters refreshed their feeds. Everyone wanted to know not just what would happen, but what it would mean. That was the unspoken truth humming beneath the excitement. This wasn't about a billionaire and a congresswoman. It was about power and respect. About who gets to speak without being talked down to. About whether dignity could withstand dominance. By the time the lights rose on stage, every word felt charged, heavy, electric. And even though commentators predicted tension, even though millions expected sparks, yet no one predicted how deeply this clash would cut. For years, Elon Musk had moved through the world like a figure carved out of myth, part visionary, part disruptor, part self-anointed truth-teller. Headlines followed him the way shadows follow light. Some praised his genius, his relentless ambition, the way he pushed industries into futures they barely understood. Others fixated on the volatility simmering just beneath that brilliance, the way he treated public discourse like a personal battlefield. And it was in those late-night hours, when timelines grew quiet and most people slept, that his contradictions revealed themselves most clearly. At 3 in the morning, Musk's feed often turned into a stream of provocations. Jabs at critics, taunts at journalists, sweeping political decrees delivered between memes and cryptic jokes. Each post carried the weight of a man who believed his perspective wasn't merely an opinion but an immutable truth. He championed free speech with the fervor of a revolutionary, declaring that open dialogue was the backbone of a thriving democracy. Yet anyone who challenged him, especially those without wealth or influence, found themselves mocked or swarmed by loyalists. It was an irony so obvious that analysts pointed it out constantly. The world's loudest defender of unfiltered expression had a track record of dismissing, minimizing, or ridiculing voices that didn't align with his narrative. He insisted he was above politics, but his tweets shaped political storms. He portrayed himself as a fighter against elitism, while wielding his wealth like a sword, slicing through conversations with the casual confidence of someone who had never been told no. Public feuds became part of his persona. He publicly insulted elected officials, belittled regulators, and sparred with activists who questioned the social impact of his companies. And with each clash, an unmistakable pattern surfaced. Musk didn't just disagree, he dominated. He turned criticism into spectacle, making himself the center of every dispute. Supporters praised him for it, calling him fearless. Critics saw something far less noble, a thin-skinned titan unable to tolerate being challenged by people with less power. Still, the contradictions kept stacking. He could spend an hour discussing the future of humanity with breathtaking clarity, then flip effortlessly into mocking someone's intelligence online. He could speak passionately about uplifting society, then dismiss concerns about worker safety or community impact. He sought truth, he said, yet curated narratives that elevated him and erased those who stood in his way. It was a fractured portrait, a man capable of brilliance but often blinded by ego, someone accustomed to winning every argument simply by showing up. So when Musk agreed to appear at the televised forum, he walked in with the confidence of a man who had always commanded the room. He expected his presence alone to tilt the energy in his favor. He believed that anyone standing across from him, especially a rising lawmaker who represented voices he'd never taken seriously, would fold under pressure, stumble under scrutiny, or shrink beneath his certainty. It wasn't malice, not exactly. It was entitlement, shaped by years of holding the upper hand. But the person he planned to embarrass wasn't built like the others. Jasmine Crockett's story didn't begin under bright lights or in grand rooms. It began in a small neighborhood where people worked hard, spoke their minds, and carried their struggles with quiet dignity. She grew up watching her community navigate a world that too often overlooked them. Families juggling multiple jobs, kids translating for parents at doctors' offices, neighbors fighting to keep their homes. From a young age, Jasmine learned that justice wasn't something handed out freely. It was something people had to demand, insist on, sometimes shout for just to be noticed. And even then, the world didn't always listen. She remembered the first time someone told her she'd never make it. She was barely a teenager, holding a stack of worn textbooks, when a teacher offhandedly suggested she wasn't college material. The word stung, but not in the way that crushes a dream. They hardened it. That night, she studied longer than she ever had before, her desk illuminated by a small lamp that flickered every time the air conditioning kicked in. She learned then what would become her life philosophy. When the world underestimates you, you don't shrink, you sharpen. College wasn't easy. Law school was even harder. She worked shifts, took notes in cramped corners of libraries, and pushed herself through exhaustion because she knew that the people she came from needed someone inside the system who understood their lives. Someone who wouldn't look away. Someone who wouldn't fold. When she finally stepped into her first courtroom as a young civil rights attorney, she didn't carry prestige or privilege with her. She carried her community. One case in particular stayed carved in her memory. A teenager, barely 17, accused of something he didn't do. Other attorneys had dismissed him, treating him like a statistic. Jasmine saw him as someone's child, scared, alone, and one mistake away from losing his future. The courtroom was stacked against him, but Jasmine's voice didn't tremble. She argued with a calm, disciplined fire, dismantling the prosecution's claims with precision. When the judge declared him not guilty, the boy's mother wept into Jasmine's hands. That moment told her she was exactly where she needed to be. As word of her work spread, she became known not just as an attorney but as an advocate, someone who stood between vulnerable people and the machinery that tried to swallow them. She took on cases others avoided, pushed for reforms people called impossible, and earned a reputation as a relentless fighter with a moral compass that refused to bend. The path to Congress wasn't planned. It was a calling pulled into existence by the very people she served. They wanted someone who wouldn't be intimidated by wealth, status, or power. Someone who spoke plainly, truthfully, fiercely. And when she entered Congress, she didn't transform. She amplified. Her voice grew stronger, her resolve sharper. She confronted injustice with the same calm intensity she'd carried since her earliest battles. Yet despite her accomplishments, she still faced the same underestimation she'd grown up with, dismissed by those who saw her identity before her intellect, judged by those who mistook her grace for softness. But Jasmine never needed validation from them. She had spent her entire life proving that strength doesn't come from being loud. It comes from being unshakable. And all of that history was standing behind her when she stepped on that stage. The stage was charged when the cameras cut back to the forum, and the air seemed to thrum with electricity. Musk leaned into the microphone, a faint smirk playing across his face as though he already knew the answers before they were spoken. His first comment sounded innocuous to the untrained ear, framed as a question about fiscal responsibility, but every word carried the weight of condescension. "Congresswoman Crockett," he began, "how do you reconcile your positions with the economic realities of innovation? Surely there are limits to what ordinary lawmakers can understand." He didn't wait for an answer. The jab hung in the room like a steel blade. Crockett's eyes remained steady, her posture unwavering. She exuded a calm confidence that drew attention, not just to herself but to the ideas she represented. Musk pressed further, his tone dripping with pseudo-intellectual superiority. He interrupted her mid-sentence, framing her attempts at explanation as hesitations, as though she were fumbling under the weight of his scrutiny. Each interjection was calculated, a test of endurance, a challenge meant to make her doubt herself in front of millions of viewers. He insinuated that elected officials lacked the stamina and intellect required to manage complex financial and technological landscapes. "It's fascinating," he said, "that people can vote for policies they don't fully grasp. How do you expect to lead when most innovators are solving problems the average legislator wouldn't even attempt to comprehend?" The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some nodded, some whispered. Twitter exploded simultaneously, timelines filling with clips of his interruptions, analysts dissecting his tone, commentators predicting an imminent showdown. But Crockett didn't flinch. Every time Musk tried to corner her, she countered not with aggression but with measured poise. Her hands rested lightly on the podium. Her gaze never faltered. Every pause, every carefully considered word, telegraphed the strength she had built over years of facing challenges far greater than one man's ego. The audience felt it. A storm was building, quiet at first, then louder, rolling toward a crescendo that no one could ignore. Musk escalated again, targeting her credibility, implying she didn't understand economics and hinting that lawmakers don't work hard compared to innovators. The words were precise, meant to wound, meant to provoke. Yet the very attempt to dominate only magnified the tension. The room's collective breath hitched. Social media feeds lit up with reaction gifs, hashtags, and commentary, anticipation crackling across every screen. And then, Musk crossed a line he never should have crossed. Musk leaned forward, voice smooth and calculating, as though delivering the final blow in a duel he had already won. "Congresswoman Crockett," he said, almost casually, "it's fascinating to watch someone speak with such conviction while so obviously unfamiliar with the rooms where real intelligence is required." The words dropped into the hall like a hammer striking steel. The audience collectively inhaled. Gasps whispered through the crowd. Phones lifted in unison, recording every syllable. A tension so dense it could be sliced with a knife filled the air. Crockett inhaled slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch just long enough for the weight of his arrogance to settle. Then, with the calm assurance of someone who had been sharpening herself for a lifetime of moments exactly like this, she spoke. Her voice was measured, articulate, precise, each word landing like a scalpel cutting through pretense. "Mr. Musk," she began, "intelligence isn't measured by the size of your bank account or the volume of your Twitter feed. It's measured by the depth of your listening, the courage to confront what's uncomfortable, and the capacity to lift others while you rise." She paused, letting that hang. Cameras zoomed in, the crowd held its breath. Musk's smirk flickered. Crockett continued, dismantling the assumptions behind his condescension with surgical precision. "Work ethic," she said, "is not defined by hours spent in a corner office or late-night tweets. It is defined by showing up for communities who have no voice, who cannot afford to be seen, who rely on you to be accountable when no one is watching. Her tone never wavered. Every sentence a strike: public service, accountability, respect. She highlighted the difference between building companies and building communities, not dismissing innovation, but emphasizing that true progress demands empathy, integrity, and inclusion. She invoked the countless people she had defended, the lives improved, the promises kept. Each point pressed against Musk's assumptions, exposing the fragility behind his bravado. The room shifted. An audible murmur traveled like an electric current. An audience member dropped a pen mid-note, the sound snapping through the silence. Twitter clips exploded in real time, frames of her calm power going viral before her final words even landed. Musk's face tightened. His carefully curated confidence faltered under the weight of dignity wielded as a weapon. Then came the line no one would forget, a statement so simple yet so devastating, it pierced through ego, wealth, and condescension alike. Power is not proof of wisdom, Mr. Musk. Influence is not a substitute for integrity, and being loud never outweighs being right when it matters most. The room erupted. Phones raised, people cheering, gasping, whispering in stunned awe. Musk sat frozen, unable to respond, as if the words themselves had lifted him from the room and left him suspended. Crockett's calm dominance was undeniable, her moral authority radiating like sunlight cutting through storm clouds. Every eye in the hall recognized it. Every viewer at home felt it. And yet, as the applause swelled and the moment seared itself into history, the reverberations of that single confrontation were only beginning. But the shockwaves were only beginning. Within minutes, the confrontation was everywhere. Clips of Crockett's final words surged across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, racking up millions of views as users replayed the moment again and again. Hashtags proliferated like wildfire. #Crockett clapback, #dignitywins, #MIC drop moment. Memes appeared, some humorous, some reverent, but all pointing to the same truth. This was a moment the internet could not ignore. Reaction videos popped up across YouTube, commentators dissecting every pause, every syllable, every look exchanged on stage. Celebrities weighed in, sharing their or at Crockett's composure and precision, praising her for turning a confrontation into a masterclass of accountability. Analysts called it the line of the year, noting how it crystallized broader cultural tensions into a single, unforgettable exchange. Across the political spectrum, the debate became a mirror reflecting a deeper clash: power versus principle, wealth versus dignity, tech elitism versus public service. Clips traveled across borders, translated into multiple languages, and found audiences far beyond the American forum. Musk supporters scrambled to defend the billionaire's intentions, some attempting to shift the narrative, others trying to rationalize the impact of Crockett's words. Meanwhile, Crockett supporters celebrated with unrestrained enthusiasm, feeling seen, validated, and represented in a way few moments of political theater had ever delivered. They shared every clip, every quote, every replay, each iteration amplifying the original moment's weight. The spectacle became more than a debate, it became a cultural flashpoint. Water cooler conversations, classroom discussions, online forums, and casual social media scrolling all reflected the same fascination. People debated the meaning, the skill, the courage. They analyzed what this confrontation said about leadership, accountability, and the intersection of wealth and morality. Every frame, every soundbite, seemed to echo with the gravity of a changing cultural tide. And in the middle of it all, as millions continued to watch, comment, and share, Crockett remained poised. She didn't need to chase the virality. She didn't need to explain herself. She let the moment breathe, knowing that what she had delivered would resonate far beyond the headlines, beyond the feeds, beyond the applause. But Crockett didn't let the moment end there. The next morning, Crockett sat for an interview, her expression calm but resolute, the previous night's tension already distilled into clarity. She spoke slowly, deliberately, ensuring every word carried the weight of intention. "It's not about me versus Elon Musk," she said, her voice steady, unwavering. "It's about dignity versus disrespect. About valuing people, not just profits. About remembering that service means standing up, even when someone tries to belittle you." Her words rippled beyond politics, beyond ideology. They spoke to anyone who had ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed because of who they were, where they came from, or the color of their skin. She became more than a congresswoman in that moment. She became a symbol of steady strength, a reminder that courage doesn't always roar, that power isn't always loud, and that true leadership comes from integrity and empathy, not wealth or fame. Her message resonated across the nation and the world. People shared clips, quoted her lines, and reflected on the deeper meaning, that respect is earned through action, that standing for others requires bravery, and that moral clarity can illuminate even the darkest corners of confrontation. Crockett's example inspired a wave of reflection and dialogue, empowering viewers to reclaim their own sense of dignity and insist on accountability in their communities, workplaces, and everyday interactions. In a single exchange, she reframed what a confrontation could represent, not as a battle of egos, but as a testament to the enduring power of principle, courage, and compassion. And that brings us to the final message of this story. Elon Musk tried to corner her, but Jasmine Crockett stood tall, and her final line left him speechless. Stand for dignity. Stand for truth. If you felt that moment, share this story, and let others witness the power of courage, principle, and unwavering integrity.